So, guys, I've got a number of stories to get into today. First, of course, we have to talk about Russia's massive overnight attacks on Ukraine, 450 missiles and drones targeting the good people of Ukraine, several regions. Here in Kyiv, we were mostly left alone. We saw some heads shot down outside the city, some outgoing air defense. I think they shot down 1 or 2 missiles. It wasn't as bad as it can often be. The real targets were Poltava, Mykolaiv, regions of Kharkiv, several others. I've got a number of stories to get into today, mainly unrest in Russia stories, and that is good news for humanity as these Russians continue to metastasize themselves into the civilized world. I've got Pokrovsk. I know you guys want to talk about Pokrovsk. I've got a friend back from Pokrovsk just yesterday. Told me some things I could tell you, some things I can't. It's just shocking what these Russians are willing to allow to happen to themselves. I mean, they're being forced to the front. These guys mostly don't want to fight, which is anyway, I'll get into that. We've got ramping up the oppression. We've got new legislation in Russia restricting SIM cards when you return home. And anyway, I'm going to get a number of stories. This is footage from Dnipro last night. This is where Russia targeted with a Shahed drone, targeted some giant apartment blocks, as they often do. And there are 11 people dead across Ukraine. A number of kids were buried in this particular building and that were rescued. Thankfully, no kids died, and they were rescued. This is the schematic of what the attack looked like. Thwarting Russian air terrorism, Ukrainian air defenses take down a Shahed drone as it targets a large residential apartment block. And this is probably the best advertisement you'll ever see for giving Ukraine sort of any air defense unit that they ask for, which the West has in plentiful numbers, collecting dust in warehouses all over the free world. This is a Shahed drone careening into what it's an apartment block that arguably has hundreds of people, men, women, kids, living it. And this is Ukraine needs air defenses, guys. So tell your friends. This is about Pokrovsk. I got a friend back from there yesterday, and what he told me, I'll just read you what I wrote here. To give you an idea of the absolute massacre of Russians taking place in Pokrovsk, 700 to 800 Russians a day are being killed, with Russians outnumbering, that's live Russians, outnumbering live Ukrainians 8-1. As you know, these Russians are doing all this. Certain death, 80% casualty rate right now in Pokrovsk, and for $4,000 to $6,000 a month. And he told me stories. I guess the structure is that the Russians have a line of guys with rifles that are forcing the low-level meat directly into these assaults. And many of them are on drugs. They capture these guys and they're totally drugged out of their minds. It looks like it's methamphetamines, some variant of some kind of speed, and they just can't stop talking. They're foaming at the mouth. And it sounds to me like it's some kind of methamphetamine that they're mass drugging these guys with. They don't actually exactly, well, he didn't know exactly what drug it was, but just crazy, crazy stuff, what these Russians are willing to put up with. He says that they're in groups of anywhere from 2 to 7, and they just keep pouring in 24 hours a day, and they're just killing them with drones and drones and drones. Of course, the Ukrainians are taking casualties too, but nothing on the level of these Russians. As you know, the Ukrainians are still holding that ground for 21 months. Amazing. The employee walk-offs are beginning to spread all over Russia as another 300 construction workers building the Institute Orgenergostroy in Ulyanovsk have gone on strike due to not having been paid in over 2 months. Currently, the salary delay has reached 2 months. This is in quotes. This is part of their plea video that I'll play you in a second. We ask you to look into this situation. Help us, because people have nothing left to pay their loans. Many debts have accumulated and everything else. This is a good point. You see, when the USSR collapsed, everyone had a house. They had a home. Because how it worked is you didn't own that home, but you were registered there. If you even wanted to move in the USSR, you had to say you wanted to move from St. Petersburg to Novosibirsk, they had these services. They were they were not online advertisements. They were newspaper advertisements where you would find someone in the city where you wanted to move that was willing to trade their apartment for yours. And you just trade registrations because, as you know, there was no real private property in the USSR beyond like small things. And so when the USSR collapsed, there wasn't homelessness because everyone had a place where they were registered, because legally you had to be registered. So everyone had a place that had their name on it. So they had a place to live. This is going to be very different. See how he just mentioned we can't pay our loans. These are mortgages. These people are going to lose their house. When all this collapses, why it's going to be so much worse, one of the many reasons why it's going to be so much worse is that it's going to be homeless. There's going to be homelessness, and mass hunger. He goes on, living conditions are also terrible. Toilets are overflowing, not being pumped out. Water is not delivered, purchased at our own expense. Then we hear this from the troops as well. They have to buy all their own stuff, even their own boots. Lunches have been canceled. There has been no food for a long time. Transport, we get there however we can, said the workers in an appeal dated November 5th. That's 2 days ago. The workers stated that they will not return to work until all wages arrears are paid. This institute was supposed to be Putin's dream nuclear research center. And here are the magical Russians pleading with their overlords. You've seen Russians begging for things before, right? They're doing it here. This is what, there's so many videos like this. And Russians are now complaining that the levels of taxes now have made it impossible for them to buy automobiles. Russians complaining that it's now impossible to import cars due to the taxes. To import a cheap Hyundai Santa Fe from South Korea now costs almost 6 million rubles, $75,000. That's one of the cheap Hyundai cars, right? The car itself is only $2 million, which is $25,000. But customs clearance and recycling fees will cost another $3.5 million. Putin's government is looting the population to pay for the war. This is due to the tax increases that we saw. They were implemented about 2 months ago. And now the Russians are flipping out. This is a car dealer in some region of Russia, and he can no longer afford to do business anymore because, it's just, who can sell a car? So he's going to buy this car for his dealership at $75,000, a Hyundai. He just goes over the numbers, and this is just one of the many complaints that you're hearing from Russians now due to the tax increases. Fearing that Russians may have acquired some decadent habits during their brief escapes into civilized countries, Putin lays down the hammer. Russian slaves will have their internet blocked for the first 24 hours after their return to the filthy and savage Russian hellscape. Yes, the filthy and savage Russian hellscape awaits. If you have escaped to the decadent West, here's the headline. Kommersant. This is mainstream Russian news, guys. Russian mobile internet subscribers will have their mobile internet blocked for 24 hours after returning abroad. And they're calling it a cooling off period, as you see. A cooling off period. Yes. 24 hours to shirk off the decadence and depravity of Western ways. Putin is just laying down the hammer, boiling the frog. Every day there's new laws like this. And speaking of insane laws, as you know, that there exists this thing called Roskomnadzor. That's it's like an internet filter. Anyway, if you search for something like Ukraine, for example, you will get FSB guys that'll come to your house, kick your door in at 5 in the morning, and they will drag you off, and you'll be tortured until you admit to whatever it is that they want you to admit to. And in the meantime, they'll probably rob some of the stuff in your house, or maybe you drain a bank account or whatever. In Russia's Sverdlovsk, a young man is facing up to a decade in prison under the new law that punishes online search activity. In quotes, searching for extremist content. You evil searcher, you 20-year-old medical professional, Sergei Glukik. I didn't include the term because he's basically, it's the Russian word for male nurse. Has been charged, but claims to have briefly searched for a Ukrainian topic, but decided that it wasn't for him. Court proceedings are ongoing, and Russians will allow their czar to do absolutely anything to him. And I guess here apparently is some of the incriminating and evil evidence of his dastardly search activity, stepping over the line, searching for Ukraine. And while some are going into prison now for singing songs that feature lyrics such as Old Man in the Bunker or When the Tsar Dies, or mentioning Swan Lake, that's another big one. Some people are getting out of jail for things they did a year ago. Today in Russia, Svetlana Marina was released from her year-long sentence of forced labor in settlement colony number 21 in the city of Kirovo-Chepatsk for discrediting the Russian army. I got this from Rus News. It's a pretty good Telegram channel. Russian Telegram channel. 2 years ago, she criticized a popular war blogger in a social media post. She didn't even say the stuff herself. She criticized a pro-war blogger. You see? Yeah, so it's like 2 degrees away from actually committing, from actually saying that the war is bad, which she didn't. Upon leaving prison today, guards told her, stay out of politics. And here's her coming back, and she says she's still going to do this stuff. So we will be seeing her again shortly. But they told her to stay out of politics, and she's clearly not intending to do that. There are some good Russians, folks, occasionally. Regime thugs have disappeared another Russian musician immediately upon release after serving a 10-day sentence for performing a song in support of music group Stop Time. Songs include lyrics such as Old Man in the Bunker. On October 22nd, Ekaterina Romanova held a concert in support of the group Stop Time, whose musicians were previously arrested in St. Petersburg. A few days later, on November 1st, the singer was detained following a report by a Z activist and was arrested for 7 days on charges of refusing a drug examination. Right. They always make up just some reason. It's usually like taxes or, I don't know, there's a million reasons they use. On Monday, November 3rd, Judicial Section Number 4 of the Leninsky Judicial District, blah, 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 Perm, arrested Romanova for 7 days. Yesterday, the singer was sentenced to 60 days of community service. Okay, so she went to jail. She served her time. She got out. And then as soon as she got out, they disappeared her. And this is something they used to do in the old Gulag days. Same exact deal. You get out of serving 25 years, and they'd give you what they called another quarter. Quarter was 25 years. Or a dime. A dime was, 10 years, of course. And this is just ingrained Soviet culture. This is all stuff that has existed for a very, very long time. And she is now, her parents are wondering where she is, and they don't know. She'll surface somewhere, later, probably with a black eye or something. Anyway, we got this guy, the foreign minister of Poland. And I just love what he said here. Putin won't be satisfied until he's murdered every last Russian, pouring them into foreign atrocity campaigns. And so far, it seems Russians are going to let it happen, even embracing it. This was a comment I made about Polish foreign minister. Just listen to his words. He's always a well-spoken guy.
In Ukraine, Russia has established an expansionist neo-imperial state ideology with which it has brainwashed its soldiers, its children, its population. And in the beginning, there is the word, and then the word becomes flesh, and it started invading its neighbors. First Georgia, now Ukraine. And of course, if Russia were to prevail in Ukraine, she would be tempted to use the territory, the industrial and human resources of that country to go further. And that's why it's important to keep Putin's army as far as possible away from our borders, which means helping Ukraine to defend itself.
Russia can't go further. It can't take the Baltics. It can't take Moldova. It can't take a piece of Romania or Poland or whatever it's in Bulgaria. It's insane fantasies of delusions of territorial expansion. It can't do any of those things without first grabbing the strategic location, human resources, and in-the-ground resources of Ukraine. Its military technology. It has to get Ukraine to do anything further. All of its territorial expansion plans involve first taking Ukraine. So it is important that Ukraine is supported. One of the most transparent Russian disinformation projects in recent memory, now circulating on social media. Russians trying their hardest to speak Ukrainian while pretending to be members of Ukrainian armed forces, attacking an effigy of Charlie Kirk while threatening his widow, Erika Kirk. Losing on every front, Russians are now allocating all efforts to swinging the U.S. electorate as a last-ditch attempt to save their failing Führer. For Russians, there is no bottom ever. And this is just more insane And you ask any Ukrainian, these guys are not Ukrainian speakers. I'll just read it to you because it's nonsense. We address Erica Kirk. If you repeat what your husband said, call to cede Ukrainian territory to Russia, and to stop providing aid to Ukraine, you will die just like your husband. Oh no. Watch your neck, Erica. The Kremlin is savvy enough politically to understand that it's the GOP in power right now, and that's the party that they need to sway, that they have been absolutely losing. You know, it's like 70% now support Ukraine, and it was like 50% just 6 months ago, as the Russian narrative continues to fall apart. And maybe because Russia's just really doesn't have the funds to support it as much as they do now. Who knows why it's crumbling, or just crumbling under its own weight. We have a situation where the entire U.S. political apparatus is now behind Ukraine. And so they are trying to rip apart what they see as the weakest link in that chain, which is the GOP threatening Charlie Kirk's widow. I mean, it's just absolutely, I don't think anyone's going to fall for this one. It's just too ridiculous. Moscow never changes. In 1983, only 7 years from the end, even while waging unaffordable wars and a spiraling economic catastrophe, Russians only doubled down on their own demise, telling us how sanctions only made them stronger. Where have we heard that before? Same global terrorism, same decay, same lies. I wonder where this guy is now. I'm sure he probably eventually escaped to a civilized country. Let's just go through it. The Soviet Union is a vast country with a powerful economy and abundant resources that will manage to withstand any blockades or sanctions. But Washington's allies, who are far more dependent on foreign trade, will feel the impact much more acutely. But keep in mind, this is 1983, right? What did the U.S. economy do from 1983 to 1988? Absolute boom, record stock market, just absolute record after record. Those were the Reagan years. Strong dollar, everything, as the Soviet Union collapsed. This cowboy-style assault on normal economic relations will hit them much harder. So it's the same old crap. Everything Putin is doing, it's all been done before. It's all the same thing. Nothing has changed. It's all the same nonsense, you guys. And on a darker note, hey, I'll just read you what I wrote here. A normal day in Ukraine while the in quotes civilized world plans the weekend trip to IKEA. And this is just one of the daily scenes out of Ukraine. That was a whole family that was wiped out when drones targeted their apartment buildings. And I'll tell you, the video that I made about 2 months ago where I went to an apartment building that 2 days before had been targeted, and a mother and a child were killed there. I don't know if you remember that. I did the intro, but I didn't tell the full story. I wasn't sure what the YouTube rules would let me talk about back then. Now I know a little more. But when I went there that day, they had decided to hold a wake where there were coffins very similar to these, and they had a little girl in the damn coffin right there, and the mother in the other coffin, and they were two side by side while there were, all the neighbors were crying. They had the coffins laid right there, white coffins just like these, and there was a little kid in this coffin, man. And you really haven't seen shit in your life until you've seen stuff like this and understand that what these Russians are and what these Russians are doing here every day. You need to. I would suggest everyone come to Ukraine and live here for, I don't know, just 6 months, man. You will be a better person. You'll go through some weird things, but you will come out the other end a much better person, because your paradigm of experience being from here to here will expand to here, and you will have small problems in life will no longer seem like problems when you see the problems of others, and maybe the problems that you encounter are the new emotions that you have as a result of the things that you'll see. And a feel-good story from this morning to end on a lighter note. This is from about 8 hours ago. Rescuers pulled a Yorkshire Terrier named Michelle from the rubble in Dnipro. She lived on the 5th floor and luckily wasn't seriously hurt. Michelle is now with her owner's relatives. The owners are in the hospital after a Russian missile and drone attack on their building. There's the doggy right there. Kind of scared, of course, after digging its way out of rubble. these are little stories, of humanity that everybody sort of grabs onto. And it's important to mix these into life every day, I think. It's you got to see both sides, Ukrainians are pro-life, and Russians are, I won't even talk about Russians because they'll kick me off. They'll kick me off of YouTube. So anyway, that's all I've got, you guys. So have a good day.